Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm your host, Lee Ji-yoon. We have a lot on our plate this morning, so let's get started. Samsung and U.S. activist hedge fund Elliott go head-to-head in their first hearing on a key merger for the Korean conglomerate. We take an in-depth look at this legal challenge. The Korean government lays out goals to go greener, but both businesses and environmentalists are not too happy with these new carbon-cutting targets. We find out why. 20 billion US dollars. That's how big Korea's supplementary budget needs to be in order to reach its projected 3% growth target this year, according to Seoul-based Hyundai Research Institute. The projection comes as economic growth is expected to worsen with the current MERS outbreak, on top of existing pullback factors such as last year's Haewol ferry disaster and falling exports. The think tank said, however, that extra government cash should help the Korean economy get back on track. Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan has said he would decide on whether to draw up an extra budget by the end of this month. Foreign investors have snapped up a net 8.1 billion US dollars worth of listed stocks this year on Korea's bourses as of last week, Wednesday. According to market operator Korea Exchange, the most sought-out stocks were those in the chemical sector, with a net $1.6 billion bought in, followed by those in the electronics and transportation industries. Among individual stocks, Samsung Electronics was the most popular. The total market capitalization of offshore investors has dipped slightly to roughly 33% from about 34% at the end of last year. Meanwhile, in the realm of retail, a survey has concluded the price of IKEA furniture in Korea is about 15 to 20% higher than that in the U.S., Germany, and Japan. Now, this is according to Seoul-based watchdog Consumer Research, which compared 126 sofas and storage units on the Swedish Furniture's websites by country. It said the average cost of all products surveyed was $474 in Korea, which was about $77 more than the cheapest of the four, Japan. A source from the research group said the high markup was especially evident in products over 100,000 won, or $90. The Korean government is mulling over a set of new goals for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. However, businesses are saying that these new goals are too rigorous, while environmental groups are saying the country is taking a step back. Our Eunice Kim tells us more.
On June 11th, the Korean government proposed 4 scenarios on the country's greenhouse gas emissions target, of which it will select one by the month's end to submit to the United Nations. It plans to cut emissions anywhere from 14.7% to as much as 31.3% annually by the year 2030. Meaning Korea will release anywhere from 580 million to 720 million tons of carbon dioxide. It marks a step back from a previous goal laid out 6 years ago that pledged to make a 30% cut by the year 2020. But businesses are arguing excessive goals will mean a hit on their competitiveness.
Strengthening regulations can lead to a contraction in domestic production, the relocation of production plants, and setbacks in investment and technology development.
Big businesses have pressed the government to present a conservative goal that it can keep, adding that even the lowest 14.7% reduction plan would lead to a 0.22% cut in real GDP in 2030. But environmental groups warn against retreating on prior goals, saying it would set a poor precedent on the global stage. They also called for a paradigm shift within the business community.
Reducing greenhouse gases and creating a low-carbon economy can create more opportunities by developing new industries related to energy efficiency and cutting carbon emissions.
Amid the real differences in opinion, the government will consider public debates before arriving at its voluntary mitigation commitment, which could become legally binding at the United Nations if it succeeds in passing an international protocol on climate change. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
Farmers across the country might have felt some relief from the rain over the weekend, but it was hardly enough to get things back on track. Global weather patterns have been causing a lot of unpredictability here in Korea, and a prolonged drought is drying up resources. With more, here's our Young.
The continued drought across the country has his poultry farm owner worried sick. He says his chicks are barely getting by with the 7 tons of water provided once a day. And he's even more concerned as the day to ship them out approaches. When that day comes, they'll need twice the amount of water.
I'm most worried about chicks dying in large numbers since they have no water to drink. As you can see, I even bought my own water tank.
The situation is not so much different at this fish farm. The owner says he's been having to pick out some 100 dead fish per day, with his underground water supply dried up and arid conditions showing no signs of improvement. He says he has no choice but to share water with other farmers given the dire situation, and the quality of his trout has dropped so much that they're not sellable on the market.
Fish farms can't stand a single hour without water. Farmland can go for days, but as trout is a cold water fish, it's hard for them to survive even without just a few hours of fresh water.
Experts say the aridity in Korea is mainly due to the warm phase of El Niño, which typically brings floods for countries in Latin America, but can cause long dry spells in Asian and East African countries. Authorities predict the drought in Korea will drag out to as long as next January. The government has agreed to pour in some $56 million to develop countermeasures and offer support for damages caused by the long dry spell. Lee Ju-young, Business Daily.
The first hearing and 2 injunctions brought by U.S. hedge fund Elliott against Samsung Group's construction arm Samsung C&T kicked off at a Seoul District Court last week. Will Elliott succeed in blocking Samsung's proposed plan? For more, we're now joined by our Shin Se-min in the studio. Good morning, Se-min.
Morning to you.
All right, so tell us a little bit more about the injunctions. What were the issues?
Right. Simply put, the American hedge funds wants to block the shareholders meeting next month, saying that the deal causes damages for Samsung C&T's shareholders. And also, Elliott is asking that a recent sale of the construction unit's treasury shares hold no sway in the final vote on the merger. And here are more details on the dispute.
It's the start of a legal battle that may shape the fate of a key merger, aiming to open the way for a transition in leadership within Korea's largest conglomerate. The leading opponent of the deal, Elliott Management, has ramped up its efforts to stop the proposed $8 billion merger, releasing a 27-page online document just a day before a scheduled hearing on injunctions filed against Samsung C&T. Elliott detailed why shareholders of the construction firm should reject the all-stock takeover offer from sister firm Cheil Industries. Some local media have portrayed the hedge fund's actions as an aggressive attempt to expand its influence within Samsung. It's also considered by many as a classic move to raise the stakes before a takeover deal.
It's like a textbook example for activist hedge funds such as Elliott to take on companies before a shareholders meeting takes place. Even if they don't achieve their initial goal with the injunctions, they will still earn more public support.
Elliott, which has a 7.1% stake in Samsung C&T, argues the proposed merger with Cheil Industries undermines the interest of its shareholders. That's not all. It also raises issue with the recent sale of Samsung C&T's treasury shares to the merger-friendly local manufacturer, KCC, an attempt by Samsung C&T to sway the merger vote its way at a shareholders meeting set to take place in mid-July. As of now, legal experts believe Samsung has a stronger case when it comes to the injunctions. But the possibility of Elliott looking for a retrial or even filing an investor-state dispute has not been ruled out. Experts also point out the country's current economic structure and regulations have up until now allowed big companies to make generational power transfers within owner families. But this practice, they say, can actually leave companies vulnerable.
It's become prevalent in many large companies carrying out M&A solely for the sake of the corporation's benefit. So if Samsung loses control of this legal battle, then more hedge funds will prey on other companies carrying out similar practices.
Analysts add Samsung's legal fight should be a lesson for other Korean conglomerates, and that corporate governance should most importantly reflect the interest of company shareholders, which is something that many family-driven businesses need to make way for.
All right, so we've looked at some of the points of contention, and I know we've just gone through the first hearing, but what are experts saying about this? Is general sentiment swaying in one way or the other?
As you may imagine, it is a very sensitive topic, and a lot of experts that I've talked to were also hesitant to share their opinions on what the outcome may be like for the trial. But based on what they have seen in the past, they say the Korean firm has the upper hand. They've listed two reasons. And number one, what Samsung C&T is doing, merging with its sister firm, even if it's to solidify the path of leadership succession, it's not illegal. So it may be a losing game for a lot of shareholders, as Elliott has objected, but by law, the practice itself is legal.
All right, then what are the other reasons?
It's based on past cases. So far, no local court has ruled against Korean conglomerates in such cases like this. So as experts have said, and they also say that you can't ignore the public sentiment. Many Koreans normally feel overly protective and uncomfortable about firms being influenced by foreign investors and shareholders. So a lot of times they see what activist hedge funds are doing as immoral and think that they're only chasing after profit. But many have argued that the Elliott hasn't actually been a longtime shareholder of the Samsung C&T too.
All right, so I guess we have a lot to look to as the case unfolds, but when can we expect the final results?
Yes, on Friday when the court's hearing started, they did mention that the decision will be out by July 1st, and that's next week, so we'll know which side gets to firm up its grip.
All right, a lot of factors and things to consider, but thank you so much for today.
My pleasure.
And that does it for now. We'll be back tomorrow at the same time, same place, so don't forget to tune in then. Thanks for watching and see you soon.